All right, still on Chrystia Freeland, still on this insufferable harpy. Let's go into Chrystia Freeland and Justice Minister Arif Virani getting grilled on bail reform. I forget how many liberal cars, like government cars, have been stolen, but the number's in the dozens. So the government is not even safe from Justin Trudeau's soft on crime, catch and release bail policies where, I mean, there's no cash bail for a lot of these things. We're keeping Justin Trudeau's political opponents in jail for up to 50 days, as is the case with Tamara Leach. But recidivist gangsters who are part of organized crime rings.
Any announcement towards combating auto theft is a welcoming step by the government. And in last so many years, so much of damage has already been done. And who is accountable for that? And what is the damage? Canadians wanted to see the changes in the criminal code in the last 5 years. They wanted to see the effective bail reforms so that criminals were behind the bars. We had seen recent Highway 401 crash where 1 3-year baby and grandparents, they died, and those suspects were out on the bail. Same things we are seeing now also. Scanners, in the budget is mentioned that over the next 3 to 5 years we'll get the scanners. Why don't we get the scanners in last 3 to 4 years? And loss to Canadian taxpayers is approximately $1 billion every year. If we calculate last 5 years, it's a $5 billion loss, 50,000 of insurance claims, and there's a taxpayer's money. And then we give 15 billion to other countries also. So 20 billion, we could not have improve our healthcare system where emergencies wait time is 5 to 6 hours. Thank you.
So thank you for those questions. There's a lot in there. Let me start with bail reform. So with respect to bail, we've been attentive to this issue, very attentive to this issue. And on bail, we worked very collaboratively with every single provincial government in this country, every single territorial government in this country, as well as law enforcement right around the country. That resulted in a bill called C-48, and we were able to secure passage of that bill this fall, and it's already been given royal assent and come into force. How does that connect to this issue? Things like serious violent repeat offenders now have a reverse onus on bail. So instead of being presumed that they're entitled to bail, it is presumed that they are not entitled to bail, and they have to convince a justice of the peace otherwise. That's significant reform. What I'd say to you here is that on that bail piece, that took about 1 year to get, maybe about 6 to 8 months to get to the point of tabling legislation, and 1 year to get it passed. Now you've got a February auto summit, and we're in May in 3 months' time, and we're already proposing further surgical amendments to the criminal code. That's very, very important in terms of increasing the maximum penalties.
You see a lot of us here today, a lot of federal MPs and ministers, a lot of elected officials from Brampton, from Mississauga. You see some of our senior law enforcement leaders here. We're here on Victoria Day because we take this issue extremely seriously. We know the challenge is real and urgent. And the reality is we have a plan with specific, tough measures. Many of them require actual legislation. They require changes to the laws we have on the books. We have put forward that legislation, and now it needs to be passed. And it can sometimes feel like parliamentary maneuvers that you see in Ottawa are just about political games, and they don't affect an ordinary person just living their regular life in their community, in a beautiful community like Brampton. But that's not true. We need these measures to be passed, and the games that we see being played at parliamentary committees and in the House of Commons, ongoing endless filibusters that mean it is taking far, far too long for urgent measures like this to be passed, that is hurting the lives of Canadians, and it is the Conservatives who are doing this.
What in the hell is she talking about? By the way, she reminds me of Miss Lippy from Happy Gilmore, the kindergarten teacher that sits in the classroom and just like paints her face with glue while all the children are out running around. That's how she talks to Canadians. But what in the hell is this woman talking about? She is part of a government that forms a majority, although it's a minority government, but they form a majority with their enablers in the NDP. If legislation needs to be passed, guess what, sister? You're the one to do it. Don't blame the opposition for not getting things done. And they should not stand on their high horse and say, it's the Conservatives stopping bail reform. Conservative premiers are so sick of their ragging the puck on this issue and cuddling gangsters that Conservative premiers are taking matters into their own hands. For example, in Alberta, Olivia, I flipped this to you in the Slack channel. Back in September, we were so sick of the feds not doing anything and also releasing dangerous offenders back into the community that our province said, we'll do our own bail reform. Thank you very much. We can't wait on these jerks in the federal government to do anything while our communities are being plagued with social decay. So Alberta did a couple of different things. We have sheriffs, so we have a provincial sheriff's department. Some of those sheriffs are going to be tasked with monitoring people out on bail, like going and knocking on the door. You're under house arrest? Knock, knock, knock. We're here to make sure you're there. So officials, this is from Red Deer Now, officials with the provincial government say Albertans deserve to feel safe and protected from repeat offenders, which is why the province says it's introducing new measures to make sure Albertans feel secure and protected in their communities. According to the government, targeted prosecution units in Alberta's major urban centers will address deteriorating safety and keep Albertans safe from those who commit violent crimes. The Alberta Crown Prosecution Service is expected to create teams with expertise to focus on the increased level of crime and the prosecution of violent criminals in Edmonton and Calgary. Prosecutors on these teams will work with law enforcement to focus on special issues affecting these communities, including drug houses and available social supports. The position of the Alberta government is absolutely clear. There's no safe haven in Alberta for criminals. So we have these special prosecution teams meant to deal with them, sheriffs who are monitoring people out on bail. And it says, in the absence of needed bail reform from the federal government, Alberta is taking a zero tolerance approach to ensure its citizens are safe and secure in their communities. Violence, social disorder, and open air drug use is unacceptable, and we will do everything in our power to take back our streets and ensure they're safe for Albertans. So they're increasing investments, money, let's just say what it is, in the Alberta sheriffs, including hiring 100 more street-level police officers in Edmonton and Calgary, and a $5 million grant to improve public safety in their transit networks. So there are things that can be done like that, if there's political will to do it. The feds don't have any political will to do it. And while Chrystia Freeland talks about the Conservatives filibustering at committee, I am one of those rare people who has the displeasure of watching these committees in the course of my work. And I see nothing but Liberals wasting time in these committees. For example, yesterday I had a couple of hours in Lethbridge before I had to leave to go to the Red Deer screening of our documentary. And so I thought, why don't watch SECU? That's the public safety committee. See what's going on down there, since social disorder seems to be a bit of a thing. We have a Conservative MP, Frank Caputo, reading a letter from Paul Bernardo's victims to the government at committee, wondering why Paul Bernardo ended up in medium security. He's a serial rapist, technically a serial killer. He's got 3 victims over a period of time. They're not a mass killing. He's a serial killer. And an absolute failing of the justice system that he was allowed to get away with being the Scarborough rapist for so long. And then he meets his lovely bride, Carla, and all of a sudden they end up killing people. And he was a rapist for a long time before Carla came along. So it makes you wonder who actually was doing the killing. I think there's some arguments to be made on either side. Anyways, he's serving life in prison. She's walking free with a brand new name. And he's in medium security. And the victims wrote a letter. The Liberals and the Bloc interrupt the reading of this letter to complain about tone. Frank Caputo was talking too loudly. Then he was talking too quietly. Then he was hurting the ears of the interpreters, although the interpreters did not complain. He was too passionate. They wanted him to talk normal. No one would say, it was the dumbest waste of time I've ever seen in my life. And if I were a living victim of Paul Bernardo, as though and there are many, the families of the dead, his rape victims, they're out there. They're watching. The Liberals and the Bloc just have no regard for victims whatsoever. And Chrystia Freeland obviously shares that sentiment where she's blaming the opposition for the things the government that has been in charge of this beautiful country for the last nearly decade have failed to do. Maybe Stephen Harper did it. Is it the ghost of Stephen Harper's government still terrorizing you? Finance gremlin. Okay, let's keep going. Speaking of the social decay plaguing Canada's major municipalities, I hope Doug Ford starts doing some of the same things that we are doing here in Alberta with regard to what's happening in our progressive run big cities like Toronto. Toronto is starting to look like Port-au-Prince, Haiti these days, with just people committing violence on the street, like full view of everybody. We had a firefighter sucker punched by a guy who I watched the video a couple times. I tried to figure out what's going on. I think he tried to carjack somebody. That person sped away and avoided the carjacking. And then he runs up to another car. Seems like he's trying to carjack that person too. And then he jumps on the side of a fire truck. Who has the lights on, by the way, or that has the lights on. So I think they're going to a call. And then this guy just jumps on the side of the fire truck and starts assaulting the firefighter driving the fire truck. And so a passerby has to come and a couple of times just grab this guy and like throw him to the ground. What is happening in Toronto? Maybe we need to send our Alberta Public Safety Minister over and help you out. Let's watch this footage. It's crazy. Welcome to Canada.
Sam, he's bleeding on the car. He's bleeding on the car, Sam. What's going on? What is going on? Oh! 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 You what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What's going on? What's going on?
He lock up. He fucking lock up. Oh, he lock up.
Yo, what's going on right now? What's going on? What's going on?
Oh! He lock up.
What in God's name is going on in Toronto these days? You know, and people are just standing on the street corner screaming, although this is Canada. So you know who's probably going to get charged with assault? The guy who grabbed him off the fire truck and threw him on the ground twice. This is Canada. That guy's probably going to get slapped with an assault charge and dragged through the system until the prosecutors say, we've punished you enough with the process. You're free to go. What a mess. Open air drug use in the streets of Toronto. You know, what a failed state Toronto is these days.